and welcome to Money Matters. We are officially live only on onedealaway.com/live, broadcasting live from New England. My name is Nev, and I am beyond excited to be here today with you to talk about what's going on in a world of money. And today's episode is going to be a very interesting one. We're going to take a look at the markets because we haven't looked at them in a little while, and we're going to kind of evaluate what's been going on. We're also going to be talking about kind of where are we with the stimulus because I know a lot of people are waiting for that. We don't, not much is going on over there for conversation pieces, but I do want to make sure we take a look at the news and what's going on. We're going to jump a little bit from a few different countries to understand what's going on then and there, and sort of what are the expectations over the summer. So things that you should know, things that are happening locally and globally that are going to be incredibly important for you as well as for those that you care about, as well as for your money and your wealth. And that is all what we're going to be talking about today. As you know, United States has been under lockdown. We're dealing with pandemic. We're sort of open, then we're closing. We're back to open, back to closing. So we're playing a nice little whack-a-mole with the COVID opening, closing, which has effect on the economics and our money, of course. Then we're going to also look at what's going on in the world and how people are reacting to some of the components that are coming out of the whole COVID and the governmental shifts and changes. We also know that the United States has been weaponizing the dollar for many, many years. And there's a new thing that has occurred, I want to say a couple of days ago, where President Trump was talking about potentially creating this sort of yet another tariff ban, whatever you want to call it, censorship to Hong Kong, which of course affects China and what China is doing to protect themselves. Speaking of the bans and the tariffs and that kind of stuff, President Trump has also put France on notice that unless it decides not to increase the taxes onto the largest and the wealthiest companies, Facebook, Amazon, Google, and so on, that there's going to be an additional 25% on imports of the French goods. So it's all fine and dandy. They're all playing this giant game of risk. But unfortunately, it's you and I that are footing the bills for everything. And I'm going to share with you exactly today what I'm talking about and how this can all affect us. So stay tuned and let's do this. And good morning, good morning, good morning. It is July 11th. It is a Saturday. Good morning to everybody watching this live. Good morning and good day to everybody watching this on YouTube channel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you very much for joining. And I think today's show is going to be a very good, very interesting one. Let's start with a bit of an interesting news that I don't think anybody expected, sort of, maybe, kind of. I don't know. Let me know if you expected this to happen or not. But Amazon is telling their employees to delete TikTok. Then it says that the email was sent in error. And basically, they sent an email out to all of their employees in United States and EU, European Union, basically saying you got to delete your TikTok, otherwise you're losing access to your Amazon email account. However, when they were probed and asked, they said, that was sent in error. You don't need to worry about it. So that was a bit of an interesting one for me that I thought, how interesting that more and more people are jumping on the TikTok bandwagon. And we'll see kind of how that goes and plays out when it comes to that component. Now, talking about the ban stuff, you might have heard that, we talked about it here on the channel as well, that many companies have decided to boycott Facebook and basically ban, quote unquote ban, stop their ads for month of July on Facebook advertising, and hope was that that is going to affect Facebook stock. So I decided, I was curious enough to take a look and say, what did it do yesterday? And as you can see, not much. It actually has gone up. It's been going up. There is no effect, zero effect whatsoever on Facebook stock. As far as these bans or boycotts or whatever you want to call them, because the amount of money going towards Facebook from these entities is very limited. And I have also received news and information that many of these companies have stopped the major sort of things that are going out, but there are also the hidden ways that you can use the network, the Facebook network, to still run ads, deliver them. And so now they're able to politically state accurate and get more publicity while still in the background running ads. Highly unethical, if you ask me, but hey, that's where we are. Now, we also talked about TikTok, which is a Chinese company, and we do have news from China because we talked about very briefly here, mentioned it just moments ago, that President Trump has been talking about removing the peg of a Hong Kong dollar to US dollar, and that is going to have a huge impact. They are shooting for the impact to have a negative effect to China, but it's actually going to have a negative effect to people as a whole. Sorry, something landed in my eye. So now we are seeing something different that is transpiring, and Chinese banks are preparing for a worst case scenario, being cut off from SWIFT, as well as Hong Kong backgrounds. Now, SWIFT is basically the exchange when you try to send money from internationally. You have to use SWIFT right now, unless you're using cryptocurrencies to transfer your money. You have to use SWIFT right now, and it's basically this international fund exchange protocol that you go through, so that whenever you're trying to settle anything in dollars whatsoever, and you're needing, and the whole world is having to settle stuff in dollars, just so you know, then you basically go through SWIFT, and because US controls it, they have been using that as a method to control other countries and tell them what to do or what not to do. So that's one of the methodologies. And so the Chinese banks are basically preparing for that. We have an article about that piece. In the latest escalation over China's de facto annexation of Hong Kong, Reuters reports that Chinese state lenders are revamping contingency plans. Lenders are said to be looking at possibility of being cut off from US dollar or losing access to US dollar settlement. What would happen in the event of a run on its branches in Hong Kong if customers feared it would run out of US currency? Now, we're going to pause over here and talk just for a moment about, if this was to happen, what does that look like? Well, it would definitely collapse the banking system, and they would likely have to go into what is known as bank holiday. It's not any special holiday. You won't find it in a calendar. It's basically a bank deciding to shut the doors and not give access to people to take money out. Now, why in the world are we talking about this piece? Well, because it affects a very large population. Hong Kong is not huge, but China is pretty darn large and pretty darn big. And there are many people that are affected by this piece. And please know that some of these components can run and come to the country, state, city, continent near you. And it's important to understand and know. So you have money in a bank. People basically get afraid that some sort of something is going to happen, that banks are not going to open, they're going to run out of money. Whatever the reason is, people then start going in and start pulling cash out. Now, we've actually got news maybe a week ago, plus minus, maybe it was earlier this week, that China actually has seen a bit of a surge of people starting to pull some money out. And they started to put in limits. There's only so much you can take out. Yes, it's your money, but no, you can't have it. That can be hugely problematic. Now, that's the reason, one of the reasons that I am also very bullish on things like gold and things like cryptocurrencies. Now, There's a problem with gold because while it is international, you can't send it everywhere, you can't take it everywhere, you can't really travel with it, and storing it is a pain in the butt. Because it is physical, so you got to find proper storage of where to put that puppy if you want to have it. And if you try to travel with it, if you have one or two coins, nobody's going to make a big deal. But when you're trying to transfer large amounts of money and you're trying to travel with gold, you can't. You're going to be stopped on borders, and there is a potential that you might have to go through all these, questionings and potential confiscation, because you might be seen as somebody who's trafficking something weird. So it's not possible necessarily to transfer it and take it out of the country as easily. This is where cryptocurrencies kind of come into play because you have a cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone. That cell phone is connected to the wallet. And while I'm not advocating that you should have hot wallets, but I'm using it just as an example that if it lives there, or even if you have cold wallet, nobody's going to stop you about carrying tech devices with you, and you can easily cross the borders, and still your money can transfer and go with you. That is the best case and number one case scenario for cryptocurrencies, and why I am so bullish, and why I believe that you, me, and everybody in the world needs to A, learn about them, and then B, start using them. I know a lot of people are out there trading and looking at it as a sort of a way to kind of maximize and grow money and all of that stuff. And I agree, yes, you can do that piece, but I'm looking at it from the safety and insurance components only, that you do have ability to put it in something like Bitcoin, for example, that has been pretty darn stable over the last few months. It can be a bit more volatile than, for example, a US dollar. But the US dollar has its own problems, as you may know, and as we're going to be talking about in this particular show, in this particular episode. So let's continue back with China. So what they're basically doing is that what will happen if they do a run? Well, they're going to run out of things, and if, as they are saying that, if 500,000 rich Hong Kongers leave the city, the peg would surely collapse, and that is going to cause a lot of problems for Hong Kong and ultimately potentially China. Lenders need to find a way to address problems of client blacklisted by the United States, especially those who might face the sudden loss of liquidity. That's one of the reasons that banks are very, very important for them. Now, aside from its contingency planning, China had said it would launch a counterattack against the U.S. hegemony. So they're looking at some of the measures of what they could or would potentially do. They could include a speeding up of the use of renminbi of China's own parallel cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS, issuance of renminbi-denominated loans to the Belt and Road in countries, right? Greater RMB used through Shanghai International Exchange for crude oil futures, an acceleration of implementation of their digital currency electronic payment system. And they didn't talk about it here, but I think an additional piece of what they are able or might be able to do is to actually go in and dump a whole bunch of treasuries, which would has a potential to hurt the United States. Speaking of gold, speaking of treasuries, let's take a look at the market and what is going on with all the different markets. Now, let's jump in and take a look at the treasury yield. As you can see, it is up. Which means that the prices have gone slightly down, but you can see in the 5 days it has steadily been going up. We go down. Sorry, it has been going down, not up. My apologies. It goes down, slightly kind of kicks off, dumps. Slightly goes up, dumps. Slightly goes up, dumps. So now we're going, it's a repeatable pattern that we can definitely see of what's going on and what's happening. And as you can see, the yields have basically, since March, right? This is March. They have kind of gone up, and then it's been mostly sideways movement. So when it comes to precious metals, you do have silver. Silver has gone actually up, and over the 5 days, even 1 month, it has been performing rather nicely. So that's a nice piece for silver and those that are holding silver. So congrats if you have been holding it and acquiring it, accumulating it. Gold slightly down after seeing that 1815-ish, 1820-ish. We are back down to the 1800 level. But overall, if you take a look at 1 month, even 6 month, you can see that we have steadily been going up, just like we have with silver. All right, now we're going to go take a look at the crude oil. It is up 5 days, slightly down in a 1 month period. It is up, so crude is climbing. Russell 2000, which is basically the smallest of the companies out there, is up on 1 day, down on 5 days, and as you can see, it has been down for a while. So that's kind of interesting piece. Nasdaq, I am expecting that it's going to be up. As you can see, it's up, up, up. New records, new records, new records. So Nasdaq and tech are booming yet again. Dow Jones Industrial is up on 1 day, up on 5 day, down on 1 month, down on 6 month, down on a year, and but still up on 5 years. And down industrial the stocks, I believe, are the thing of the past. I think that this market, at some point, this index, at some point, is going to go the route of VIX or TWIX, and it's going to get delisted. And the reason I say that, of course, I don't know that for certain. My crystal ball, as I always like to remind you, broke years ago. And the reason I am saying what I am saying and where I'm kind of coming from when I'm talking about this component is the fact that it represents a lot of the blue chip companies, which are these old fashioned companies that are slowly but surely dying and are being currently propped up only by the Fed, the Treasury, and the government buying ad nauseum. They do not have, a lot of them don't have fundamentals to keep them going. And in the highly technological world, they are sure to disappear and be replaced. S&P 500, it is up on a day. Let's see, 5 days, kind of up. 1 month, not so much up. 6 months, still down. Year to date, 1 year up and 5 years up. As you can see, out of all of the indexes that we've seen, Dow is the one suffering the most. But things are not over yet. We have covered some of the news around the markets, around what's going on with the China piece and what's going on with the government stuff. Yesterday, we had a very in depth show talking about real estate, and we focused very largely on the big cities and the impact of what's going on when it comes to real estate in the big cities and what can we expect. We talked about the taxes, we talked about the rentals, we talked about all of the different components, and we're going to continue slightly on that tangent, but we're going to expand a little bit. Now, I do have an article almost to remind you and kind of recap what we talked about. And a quarter of New York City apartments renters haven't paid rent since March. So we're talking March, April, May, June, July, right? Almost 5 months, y'all. The real story is where one consumer is severely damaged due to the virus induced downturn. And even though people are talking about, Trump is talking about, everybody's talking about recovery, recovery, look, everybody's doing amazing. That is not the real story of the real people. Real story of the real people is that we are suffering, we are hurting, and we need assistance and help and massive change. That's where a whole lot of riots are coming in. And yeah, they are focused right now here in the United States about race, about gender, about equality and inequality. And a lot of it has to do with deeply rooted challenges, not just when it comes to race and gender and nationality and all these other pieces, but it also has to do about equality when it comes to money or lack thereof. And talking about the violence and inequality and that stuff, and we'll come back to the article, I promise. I do want to go in and show you that violence is happening everywhere. We're seeing it happening all over the place for the Black Lives Matter movement, but we're seeing it now expanding into many, many different components of it. One of it is that the violence and demonstration against new protest law in Greece, and people are going in Greece protesting, throwing firebombs and mass demonstration happening in Greece all because the government is saying, the peaceful protests have got to go because it is unsafe. Same thing or similar thing is happening in Serbia. They're banning mass gatherings after a virus lockdown protest, and they actually were threatening to lock the country back down, which is what sparked the movement and demonstration. These countries have been demonstrating for last, I want to say, about 4 days or so, and it's not going away. This is sort of the rising that we're going to be seeing in the 2020 and potentially into 2021. So I do expect very, very, very volatile social unrests happening, not just in the United States, but throughout Europe, Latin America, Asia, everywhere around the world. We're going to be experiencing this sort of spring rising, as they call it, but it is going to be a rising of 2020s. The problem, we're going to switch back. Sorry, I didn't explain, but we're coming back to the rent crisis in Europe because it does tie in with the additional pieces that we're going to talk about. I promise it will all make sense while we're jumping all over the place. The problem gets worse, and that is because when rental income for landlords collapses, they will experience financial hardship as well, including services, mortgage payments, and inability to cover another building related expenses. Direct payments to Americans now make up 25% of all personal income. So direct payments that folks are getting from the government is a quarter of all of their personal income, which is suggesting that when stimulus runs out, which is expected at the end of July, July 25th and 26th, as we talked about in previous episodes, because all of those things close on not a month, a day of the month, but of the day of the week, and they're all closing on 25th and 26th. So we have what about 2 weeks left of this piece before it all goes away, and the economy consumption will crater. If Congress fails to pass the second stimulus bill, this will prove disaster for landlords as renters will not be able to afford rent through the end of summer. Last month, New York State passed Tenant Safe Harbor Act, which makes it even harder for landlords to evict. And even if they're able to evict, the demand for rentals has plunged. People are fleeing cities. And we talked about all of that stuff yesterday. Now, I do understand that some of you are saying, well, the tenants need to be protected as well. And I absolutely agree. But here is part of the challenge. We're going to be talking about the stimulus bill and where we are with that. When can we expect to see something, if we are going to see something, and why I think that it's not coming fast enough. And one of the things that is kind of a piece that I wanted to highlight that I talked about yesterday in our news report in our Money Matters live show is that I talked about that a lot of landlords are not sitting on piles of cash. They have a very small margin as well, and they are rent to rent as well. And here it is. Redhead said that 40% of tenants in her 50 plus unit building skipped out on rent payment in June. We are rent check to rent check like our tenants. We have small cushions. Many folks do have very small cushions, and that is highly problematic for all. And if landlords are not able to collect the money, they are going to be forced to sell. When many of them are forced to sell, the markets will plunge because there's not going to be many people willing to buy. Because why would you buy an asset that doesn't pay you money? So when we see a huge supply jump in, low demand shows up on the other end, prices will compress, prices will go down, and that is going to have a huge impact on taxes. And in a moment, I will talk more about taxes and what we can all expect and how all of this stuff is going to affect every single individual and not just in the United States, because this is coming to the country near you. But first, let's talk about that extra $600 unemployment benefit, and it probably won't be extended. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, he is actually basically saying that no, we're not going to continue with this piece. And one of the pieces that you also want to and need to understand is not only are they very seriously talking about not extending this extra $600 that everybody depends on, well, everybody that is unemployed depends on, there is also a potential that none of us are receiving any money whatsoever, although I think that that will change. So if they don't pass it this summer, when all of this crisis hits and we hit a deep doo-doo, which I expect us to hit, then it is going to pass and it's likely going to turn into universal basic income, meaning every single month or every week or every couple of months or however they end up structuring it, we are going to start receiving money. But that is not going to happen right now. Right now, you may or may not know it. I have been talking about it. Nobody in government is working. Well, I can't say nobody, but the people that are making decisions about this stuff are in recess. They have been since July 4th, and they're not coming back until July 20th. Now, I want you to keep in mind the dates. They come back on July 20th. They haven't agreed to anything. There's all these different proposals, most of which are going to be dead on arrival because you have to get everybody to agree and to do stuff. And you have the $600 benefit piece expiring on 25th or 26th. So they have less than a week to come up with something, pass something, and roll it out. They're not very fast when it comes to this stuff because everybody has some sort of agenda. Some people want it digital. Some people don't want it digital. Some people want it paper. Some people don't. Some people want it on wooden money. Wait, wooden money? Really? Did I just say that? Did I just say wooden money? Well, there is a reason for that, y'all. You are not going to believe this. I have always been raised. My mom, bless her soul, may she rest in peace, always told me never accept a wooden coin. But now, Washington, small town in Washington State, is printing local dollars that it hasn't done since the Great Depression. Is basically printing money on wood y'all. Yes, so there you go. It's a town of Tenino, community of fewer than 2,000 people near Seattle, has fired up the printing presses after 90 years to fight the virus-induced downturn that has decimated the region. Residents are eligible for $300 per month in wooden dollars subsidized by the local government grant programs. There you have it. It is a beautiful $25 wood chip. Yep, there you go. Currency is not made of cotton linen material or zeros and ones in the blockchain, but rather wood. And one of the interesting pieces is that they're using an old press that they used way back when in the Great Depression. And then people tell me, Nev, you are wrong. We're not entering the Greater Depression. Really? Really? Are you sure about that? Let's take a bet, but I don't gamble. Too bad. I would have won. Not long ago, we also know that a small southern Italian town of Castellino del Biferno printed their local currency to support the local economic during the pandemic. We are also seeing that the bartering has been booming as well as the search when it comes to microcurrencies has been going up yet again. Now, here's what all of this means. The Federal Reserve is not in the business of saving small communities. They're in the business of stabilizing too big to fail banks and Wall Street corporations and hedge funds. What that basically means for you and I is that the emergence of local currencies could be coming to a community near you. And you can see where the searches have been happening. And something very interesting that you might make a connection with this piece right here. Yesterday's episode, when we looked at the map, when we were talking about real estate, there were certain states that I pointed out that are having huge issues when it comes to rent payments. And guess what? They were California, Texas, New York. I can't remember if Florida was one of them. It wouldn't surprise me. But do you see connection? Because I certainly do. Now, we are going to be talking about the taxes and what can you expect. Now, yesterday we talked about the fact that majority of the cities, the government depends on tax revenue to pay them. Now, they don't collect a whole lot of tax from you and I who are earning, 30, 40, 50, even $100,000. That's not where they're getting a lot of money. They're getting a lot of money from properties, property taxes, property transfers, right? So when there's a transfer in sales, uh, corporations, corporate earnings, as well as the sort of the sale on goods. That's where a lot of income is coming in for the governments. However, there is a problem. The sales of the real estate have stopped. The rentals are not coming in. Sales are not happening. Traveling is not happening. So a lot of the taxable goods are not coming to the government, including many, many, many businesses shutting down. And above all, many of the things that people would expect to kind of governments get and they had to print and all of this stuff is sort of getting this double squeeze again. So now, after months later, we are starting to realize just how deep the economic fallout will be. And Americans are scrambling to adjust their lifestyles to totally new world order. And I find it interesting that they have said new world order because truly that is what I believe we are entering. And I think it is absolutely happening. But here's what's going on. The tax man is hurting as well. Tax revenues at all levels of government have plummeted like never before, and the pain is essentially especially acute for city budgets. We talked about this yesterday, y'all, when I said cities are dying and they're seeing mass exodus. People are not going in, people are not spending, people are leaving at mass, and basically that is hurting the cities and what they're able to do. But let us continue. Now, there are certain things that are kind of happening. We have some information about states, very, very important. Alaska is projecting an $815 million decline in revenue in the coming fiscal year. New Mexico could see a 1.5 to $2 billion drop. And while Americans clamor to figure out how to make ends meet in their own households, so too is the government trying to figure out how to balance the budgets. Now, how much money can we extract from people without causing extreme poverty and triggering widespread revolt? I am going to pause here and say too late. Too late. The whole trying to stop the extreme poverty is a bit too late because as they stop printing, if they stop printing, they will receive the extreme poverty and widespread riots and revolts. There's going to be a revolution 2.0 or 3.0. I don't even know which one we're going to hit. Depends on the country, I guess. But so they can't stop printing. As they continue printing, they're going to get into more deficit. As they get into more deficit, you kind of see where this is going and why I have been saying that the entire financial system will have to be completely transformed and flipped. There is, mark my words, there is going to be some sort of meeting somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know if it's going to be Mar-a-Lago. I don't know if it's going to be another Bretton Woods. I don't know if it's going to be, some sort of city in the middle of nowhere, Jackson Hole. They're going to travel, to Antarctica. I don't know where they're going to go. Maybe they're going to sit on a plane and circle the planet while they're trying to figure out what in the world to do. But new world order is coming. A new financial system is coming because the current one is broken and it's not working. How exactly it's going to look like? Anybody's guess. I got nothing. I just know that is coming. So get ready for that. The answer, of course, of how much money, how to extract more money is going to be taxes. Yes, this is the primary way of how governments make money. Taxes. That's what their income is. Primary is property taxes because that's one of the things that people are still paying and having to pay while locked out at home and unable to shop. And not only that's one of the reasons, but because everybody needs a home It's an easy thing to tax. You can't hide a house. Where the heck are you going to hide a house? How are you going to hide it? You have to have a place to live, right? It's attached to the piece of land. Like you can't, most of them are. I mean, we do have some of those tiny homes that are adorable, by the way, love them dearly, that you can, attach to your car and go somewhere. But the problem is that more and more cities and states are prohibiting these tiny homes to be actually parked somewhere and go somewhere. So you can get a land and park it there. But guess what? Still gonna have to pay a property tax. I mean, they get you one way or the other. There is no escaping this, y'all. No escaping this. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, it doesn't affect me, Nev, because I'm a tenant. Well, guess what? Tenants are going to experience potentially larger rents because of this stuff. Because look, if folks are having, let's think about it, right? Your income is getting slashed. We talked about it already previously on show. You're not getting money from the government because they're on recess. Remember, it's summertime for them. They have to enjoy beach weather and swimming in the ocean or lake or whatever else that they're doing right now. I mean, it's ridiculous, y'all. And then you have the squeeze of additional cost because some of the most necessary components like food and water and healthcare and that kind of stuff is going through the roof. We're seeing inflation there, and now you're having higher taxes for everything. As you can see, it's sort of a squeeze from every direction. Now, for landlords, the only thing that they can do is raise rents. But there's a problem there too because tenants can't pay. Okay? So it's going to be a mass disaster. A mass disaster. And this is the reason why I expect that there's going to be universal basic income coming to everybody. And that is going to have to stay. Otherwise, I mean, when you think of like there's going to be riots. And if you think what you're watching right now and seeing right now that we talked about here today on the show or previously, what you're seeing on the news is a big deal, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because when people get hungry and they got nothing to lose, they lose it and they go bananas. Now, let's take a look at what else is going on. And here's some of the things that we have actually heard from certain cities and states. Nashville Mayor John Cooper is openly proposing raising property taxes by 32%. Uh, that's ridiculous. 32%. So, how is this going to affect Nashville real estate? Well, it's very simple. If I can't afford to pay taxes, the government will actually foreclose on my property and it's going to be sold off at an auction. The problem is that if the taxes are so ridiculously high on the property, it doesn't matter that it's being sold on an auction. It doesn't matter what the price is because they will price it, they will basically assess it to whatever they assess it to. And if the taxes are so ridiculously high, well, guess what? Nobody's going to want to buy it. When that ends up happening, people end up leaving. When people end up leaving, less money comes to the government, to the city, and they start slowly but surely dying. So while short answer is taxes, that's not going to work long term. But nobody is thinking long term, and that whole impact. Remember, we talked about it. I think this week in the show. We talked about the whole fact that nobody's thinking about how does this affect me in future? How does this affect me 5 years, 10 years from now? Everybody's thinking about how do I scratch an itch today? And it doesn't matter that it hurts us deeply tomorrow. Big problem. Dallas, Texas is looking at a proposed 8% increase in property taxes. Okay, not as bad as 32%, but nonetheless, very, very steep. Chicago Mayor Lightfoot, that's funny. I like that name. Chicago Mayor Lightfoot has said the property tax increase is on table, and I guess he won't be all that light-footed on that one. Sorry, I had to do it. I can't help myself. You're going to get this like dad jokes all day long. That's as good as it gets here. California is considering a partial reversal of Proposition 13, which will allow government to assess commercial properties differently, creating an increase in property tax revenue without actually increasing the property tax rate. And they might not do it right now, but I guarantee you, California will increase taxes because that's what California does. That's the only thing they know how to do is increase taxes. Let's see, Arizona, where taxes would be raised on income above $250,000 to boost teacher salaries. So when they don't increase the property taxes, they're going to increase income taxes. And some will do both. They will do income, they will do property, they will do sales, they will do tax until you are taxed to death. And if you think that you're going to get any additional service for all that extra tax, you are grossly wrong. Colorado, which is targeting corporations for at least 151 million in taxes to fund out-of-school learning. North Carolina, which would issue bonds worth 1.9 billion in part to pay for school capital improvements. New York is pitching the idea of tax increase for wealthier people. Define wealthier, they're probably going to define somebody at $100,000, which it may sound like a lot of money if you live in a smaller town or you live in a state or a country where cost of living is less. But I assure you, $100,000 in New York City, is nothing. I mean, you saw the rents. A studio is $2,600 a month. Add that up and then add food and everything else, and you can see how quickly people will run out of money. And when they talk about here the wealthier, all right, when they say they're going to increase taxes for wealthier people, they're not talking rich people here. They're talking about people who have an income, right? The active income that they're getting from their jobs or businesses. What is that going to do? Well, those that have a business have ability to leave. They will leave. They will leave. This is mass exodus out of these places. The problem is we'll see who the last one is to stay standing and decide not to do it. And that, my friends, that is going to be a place where everybody is going to transfer to, where that is where everybody is going to go. That is where real estate is going to boom, as will businesses. So you got to watch out for that stuff. And if you haven't thought about it before, remember, you heard it here on Money Matters, only on onedealaway.com. New Jersey is expected to see an unknown increase in taxes as the government moves to borrow billions of dollars to cover budget gaps. CNBC reports that many states across the nation will be looking at tax increases in many areas, including corporate income taxes, online purchases, excise and sales taxes, property taxes, and gross receipt taxes. And even though you did not create the fraud in the financial system, even though you were forced to close down your business, even though, I'm going to continue here, you did not decide that money should be printed or that somebody should be getting rich on your back, you and I will now be forced and used as a tax kettle to pay for this giant, as they called it, Foster clock. And I absolutely agree. But wait, Nev, the jobs are coming. The jobs are coming. They're saying that the jobs are going to come, Nev. We're all going to have jobs. Yeah, I've been telling you for a while, and I have been explaining to people for a while. People are going to be replaced with technology. Don't believe me? Well, I have one last piece of news just to sweeten the pot and show you that that is not going to happen. The jobs are not coming, and robots are coming our way. Hey, wait, they're here. As the transformation becomes more evident by the week, we want to focus on automation and artificial intelligence. Ooh, exciting. Hotel Trio in Hallsburg, California is surrounded by wineries and restaurants in Hallsburg, Sonoma County region. Recently hired a new worker named Rose the Robot that delivers food, water, wine, beer, and other necessities. And the 4-foot plastic cylinder with wheels, an innovative robotic butler that offers patrons a contactless experience while staying in the hotel. And of course, cutting the jobs as well. Here's Rose, or Rosie. Would it be Rosie? I don't know. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. As Rosie, let's call her Rosie. As Rosie approaches the room with the delivery, she calls the phone to let the guest know she's outside. And you open a door, she opens the lid on top of the head, and you can reveal the storage compartment of all your stuff that you ordered. Then she asks you to give her feedback of how satisfied you are with the order. Then she says goodbye, turns around, and goes down the hallway. You close the door, and apparently she emits chirps that sound like a mix between R2D2 and a little bird. There you have it. Rosie. Yes, Rosie is at your service. And, this is one of those things, while contactless, yes, and it's making hotel guests probably feel a little bit better, it's also removing jobs because now you can spend, I don't know, $30,000 per Rosie. You get, four Rosies. And aside from occasional maintenance and some tech, you no longer have to pay them. Well, guess what? That's what the cost is of an employee to go in and out, but you got to pay benefits. You got to let them go out when they're sick. You got to schedule around the vacation. You got to do all of those things. And companies are switching over to robots, to AI, to technology. And so, that's the direction where the world is going. Jobs are not coming back. And that concludes our news. I hope that you have enjoyed the show. And while it wasn't right, like all pleasant news, I think it was important stuff because it can help you drive your decision making of what you need to do next. If you are replaced by somebody like Rosie, for example, or you're about to be, it is time to get retrained and re-enter workforce differently. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, it's very challenging. Yes, I can tell you that it is a struggle to try to pivot at the age of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. But you are not too old. You are never too old to pivot and to change. All you got to have is decision to want to make change and then go for it. Go out there and retrade for different kind of job and position. Go out there and learn how you can invest in different things so you can protect your stuff. Now, I'm not teaching you how to be a programmer. I don't know how to do that. I do know people who are excellent at it. I personally am going out there and learning how technology works to help me and my business so that we can pivot as well and can continue to kind of evolve with the evolving economic world. What I can do is help you when it comes to your money and your education about money. And if that's something you want to do, then come check out onedealaway.com. Visit the academy. I think it's the best thing and best deal out there for you to get everything you need. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay forever money blessed. And do remember, you are only one deal away.